how tragic really is it? Because we saw that when Yosef was getting lost, and Hashem sent a malach to point him in the direction of his brothers.
I'm going to
so
explain
that
to you why
he could get
it's
to the
God's.
point where
God
he
is
saw-
willing to let it go, but it could be done in many ways. Are you willing to sell your brother? No, I hope not. And therefore, that's the tragic part.
It depends on the price.
So the tragic part is the fact that they would
The
even
brothers
be in that
sold them.
situation
Yeah.
where they want to sell their brother.
Now, we tried to explain the brothers are not criminals.
That's ridiculous.
They are great tzaddikim. And we tried to explain yesterday that they subjectively think, Vayitnaklu oto, as the foreknow says, Vayitnaklu oto lahamito, they deem him as plotting against them. We brought the Rav Hirsch's commentary understanding that he's taking away their liberties. Am Yisrael will not be able to be built only with 11 today, and therefore they as if the Midrash says they made like a field court there. They decided amongst themselves, the 11 brothers, that he is worthy of the death penalty. He's like pursuing against us, not physically to kill us, but to subdue us, that we should all bow down to him. And that would be deeming a death penalty. One of the great authors 2 generations ago or so, Rabbi Elio Kita, right, the author of the Book of Our Heritage. It's a fantastic sefer that we should all be getting, at least for Hanukkah now, and every month goes according to the Hebrew calendar. Do you know the sefer?
Are we
It's
allowed
very-
to take books out?
What?
Are we allowed to take books out?
Yes, of course. There's a sign-out sheet.
Yeah, but it's all completely.
Well, so we'll come to the office, we'll print out another one. He has a commentary onto the Chumash. I saw that my father, Rabbi Horowitz, brought his commentary. He brings an interesting, by the way, we should wish you all a good year. It's a Hasidic like New Year today. It's Yat Kislev, Yud Kislev. The Balatanya was freed out of the Russian prison. Today, last night was a very gigantic event in Binyanei Oma all night long. Sales of Hasidic books on sale and playing music. Thousands and thousands of people went to the affair there. One of the great Hasidic masters wrote a book called Mei Shiloach, the Shiloach Waters, which is the name of the spring underneath the Temple Mount. And he explains in his great Hasidic book that the quarrel between the brothers is based upon some sort of political argument, how to understand the decree of God that we explained ourselves yesterday, of the Brit, who remembers the word in Hebrew? Brit Bein Habitarim. Let's repeat it. Brit Bein Habitarim. The covenant of the pieces where their God decreed, Yadoat Teda, God says to Avram Avinu, 3 decrees. Aleph, where you're going to be strangers. Bet, you're going to be in servitude. And 3, affliction. 2, the seed of Abraham in a land which is not theirs. According to Yosef, he understood that, you know what, we can do this decree, even here in the land of Canaan. It says, in a land which is not yours. Let's lower our profile. Let's lower our heads vis-a-vis the natives, Canaanites and others. They'll rule over ourselves temporarily, and we'll be in a status, not an A1 visa, not in a tourist visa. We'll be gerim, we'll be strangers. Let's be citizens sugbet. Have you heard of that expression in Hebrew? What is sugbet? Second class citizens. Okay? However, that was Yosef's understanding of the Gzera, of God's decree. But the children of Leah, and amongst them Yehuda, that he says, no. Yehuda already knows that I'm going to be the king of Israel. He and his brothers opposed with a lot of energy and a lot of strength the approach of Yosef. And he says, if we're going to stay here and be second-class citizens to the Canaanites, that's going to bring a Holocaust here, God forbid. They suspected that the nations, the living here, will just take advantage of their weakness, pursue them, and it's going to cause tremendous things. And therefore, they made a psak, halacha, amongst themselves, that he, forcing us to stay here and be subdued to him and then to the Gentiles here, he has a law of what we call in Hebrew a rodef. What does the word lirdof mean? To pursue. Someone pursues to kill you, to take away your liberties, then it's like you're obligated to death. Or not only a rodef, but there's a term called mored b'malchut, to rebel against the kingdom. That was, in honor of Yutet B'Kislev, the Meishiloch's explanation of the argument between Yosef and his brothers. Now, the brothers are overcoming. Obviously, they declared what they declared, but Reuven expresses opposition, as we saw yesterday. He's not interested in an absolute way, and therefore he said the famous words, Lo nakenu nafesh. We're not going to what?
Lay a hand on him.
Lay a hand on, we're not going to kill him. At the end of verse 21, you saw those clear words. What is the reply of the brothers, please? What is the reply of the brothers to his basic request, Lo nakenu nefesh? Do you see reply in between 21 and 22? Well, let's read 22. We're up to there.
No.
Vayom, we're going to read it again. We read it yesterday. Vayom adam Reuven al tishbechutam. He's speaking again. That means we don't see a written reply here of the brothers, but it's clear that they didn't agree. Why didn't they agree? Because what is Reuven forced to do?
Speak again.
Speak again plus change strategy. Or let's say change the tactic that he's doing. And therefore he suggests in verse 22 an alternative plan. What does he say? Hashlichoto elaborazeh. Let's throw him, lower him down into this pit. Viad al tishlechuba, but no one should touch him. Meaning, what is he saying vis-a-vis what the brothers want? The brothers want to kill him. What is he negotiating for?
Essentially.
He'll be killed. He'll be killed, however, without us actively and directly killing him. Meaning, we would not be obligated. What penalty? If what happens? Now, if he comes out alive, that means God's hand is there? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Especially if we talk about
Snakes.
waters are not there, but nechashim and akrabim, snakes and scorpions, are there. We'll get to that point in a moment. We mentioned yesterday, but I want to emphasize it again. The Tanakh does not usually share with us what's in the mindset, what's in the heart of the images of the great persons we're speaking about. However, there are very few cases in the Tanakh that it happens. And here we itemized one case. The Tanakh tells us what is in the mind of Reuven. When he says, let's lower him into the bore, the Torah says at the end of 22, see it again in Hebrew, Leman hatziloto miyadam. That is his plan. He wants to rescue, save
Yosef and bring him back to their father.
Right. So this is one of the few times the Torah tells us what's going in his heart. We said yesterday, I don't know if anyone argued against this, that this was not told to his brothers. Do you understand why? Because his brothers want to kill, have him killed. So gentlemen, this phenomena, which is very unusual in the Chumash, awakens the following opinion in the Talmud. Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Mirion, one of the great Amoritic scholars in Eretz Yisrael, and he expresses himself and he says the following. Listen to this. Had Reuven known that a Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to write this sentence inside the Chumash, and what? That Reuven wants to save him, his brother, from the others, and it would be, he would be a hero, right? The fact that God is writing this is basically saying, you're so courageous, you're so special. Had he known that it's going to be written in the Torah for all generations, he would have just taken Yosef, put him on his shoulders, and brought him, transported him to his father. Meaning, had Reuven known what would be the end result, that the brothers Aleph are accepting not to kill him directly, then, and God would appreciate this so much, then really, and it'd be written for all generations in our holy Torah, then he wouldn't have to conceal. He wouldn't have to conceal. Rather, he could have disclosed what he wanted to do. Tov, the brothers, did they accept Ruvain's suggestion? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Yes. Even though they think that that Yosef is obligated to die. Okay. Now they're hoping that with Ruvain's suggestion, they're accepting that after you said how many days you can't eat or can't drink, he would find his death inside the pit. Do you think they asked themselves, but if it doesn't work, if Yosef would be rescued, then what would that be a sign of?
The dreams are true.
Divine intervention.
Right. What else?
That he is the favorite.
He's the favorite son. What else?
The dreams are true.
His dream is true.
Wow.
In other words, it could have been in their judgment that in the end result, if Yosef remains alive, then, of course, they looked and checked first. No water. The water what? They didn't, there was no water. The Torah testifies about it. It could have been that they threw a stone into the bore and
Heard.
was there a splash? No splash. But they couldn't see the nechashim and the akrabim, the snakes and scorpions. We determined yesterday, according to Gemara in Masechet Shabbat, page 22, it's a sugya of Chanukah, that the depth of the bore is
10 meters.
how many amot?
20.
20 amah, 10 meters, and therefore the eye cannot see that deep down. Just like you can't light near Chanukah, we said, at the height of 20 amah, 10 meters, because the purpose of Ner Chanukah is to publicize the miracle. And when people walk in the streets, they don't walk this way, or they're going to bump their heads into the pole that your mother told you don't do that, so you don't get bumped. So, gentlemen, had there been water in the pit, they wouldn't have lowered him into there, right? Because that would be considered what halachically? You're drowning him. That would be murder. Had there been water in the pit, that would be drowning him.
That's what they were trying to do.
They accepted Reuven's suggestion not to actively kill him and therefore absolve themselves of murder. Gentlemen, therefore they couldn't see the nechashim and the akrabim, as the Midrash attest to. More than this, had they known that there would be these creepy crawlers, these creatures of snakes and scorpions, then they would not have lowered him into there. Now, as a result, we're learning that when they do lower him into there, they're hoping that he's going to die, but they clearly understand that if he is alive, then they're going to understand that they made a mistake, that God wants Yosef to be saved. This brings us to the point of verse 25. I want to read the direct continuation. Do you have, please, verse 25, Kafeh? It starts with what word? Which word does it start with? Vayeshev. That's all of you have the place. For those that don't have it, please get it, please. I want to read the first 3 words, and I want you to look up in space, not in the Chumash. I want you to think, and I want you to raise a comment, whether it's positive or whether it's negative. Vayeshvu le'echol lechem. Look at me. They decided to eat. 1 second. I hear already what's hurting Reuven's hearts. I want to hear from others first. They're having a meal now. Okay. What do you have to say about this, Mr. Resnick?
It's an odd time to have a meal.
It's an odd time to have a meal. Can you please explain to him gastronomically why they're having a meal now? No.
They feel stressed.
They're what?
Maybe they feel stressed and they want to eat.
They were stressed. Why don't you use the word hungry? People are hungry. They just went through an ordeal and they're having a meal. One second. What you said? You want to add something?
I want to add. I feel like it's kind of like not interrupting, but it's kind of like distracting in some way.
Distracting.
In some way, like they're trying to orchestrate this, and then they're like, oh, let's just eat bread. Maybe
bread, by the way, is a general word for a meal, not because we base the meal on bread. What do you want to think, Russell? What do you feel when you're reading this?
It does seem kind of like let's just not mind what's going on right now. Let's kind of move on, do our own thing while he's in there.
What does that express?
They do not
1 second. What does that express? Let's not mind what we just did.
Insincerity.
lack of empathy.
Lack of empathy,
Yes, I would say
necessary.
lack of empathy. Yeah.
What do you say, Ariel?
Selfishness.
Selfishness.
Maybe like a lack of conviction.
Do we know if they're eating was it a goat or a sheep? that
No, not
he
yet.
killed
Not
to-
yet. Not yet. Not yet. Okay, Reuven, what did you want to express?
Oh, I'll leave it to you.
That's a good answer.
Yes, Ariel?
Rob, we didn't hear what they had for breakfast. We didn't hear what they had for dinner. Nor did we what they ate yesterday. So in addition to them eating, why are we being told that they
Oh, very good. So,
We didn't hear any of
what is the Torah coming to educate us? Anything that's written in Torah has to have some sort of significance,
Right.
important value. So, what's going on? You should know that our sages interpreted this in two different directions. To the shame of the brothers that several of you are expressing, but also to the praise of the brothers. Let's start with the negative first and get to the positive. You didn't say it, but to such words because you're very careful with the tribes of Israel. But some of Chazal talk about not only the lack of sensitivity, the lack of empathy, but it's cruel. Cruel. Why is it especially cruel? Turn, please, to when Yosef reveals himself to his brothers in Mitzrayim. To Yosef, where he explains. Let's find out where in the Torah does he reveal himself. And maybe someone, can portray this. Mr. Wiederman, you're very good in acting. You're Yosef. You're Yosef deep down in the pit.
Okay.
Mr. Thomas has a microphone.
Okay.
What do we hear?
Hell.
Can you be a little more dramatic?
The screen
I'm kind of
reveals
sick,
it.
man.
Okay.
Maybe Hirsch would like to
You can
demonstrate
teach
that.
us.
Say it.
Well,
You're Yosef in the pit. You don't have. Very good. Excellent, excellent, excellent. I think he deserves a applause. Bivakasha, do we hear about this here or not?
No.
Huh? We don't hear about this.
there's also
So let's
no
turn.
comment from Russia.
Let's turn. Which parsha does he reveal himself?
Me.
Vayigash. It's like I think it's like on page 450.
What do the brothers say about hearing the terrible thing? Here it is. Chapter 42, verse 21. 42, verse 21. We're talking about Yosef wants to put in prison some of his brothers in order to bring the others down there. And what do they say to themselves? I'm reading. Vayomru ish el achiv. Have you found it? Chapter 42, verse 21. One says to the other, Aval. However, Ashemim anachnu. We are at fault. Alachinu, on our brother. Asher ra'inu tzarat nafsho. We saw the trouble of him. Bitchaneno eleinu, when he was pleading with us. Velo shamanu. And we didn't listen to him. Who was pleading?
Yosef.
When was he pleading?
So we're in.
When he was in the bore. He was screaming, help, save me! I'm your brother! Everyone can imagine with the words that he's saying, please don't do this to me, right? Did they listen?
No.
Now I want to ask you a question. You're a man with a lot of passion and heart, I've noticed. I want to ask him a particular question that the Torah does not point out. Let's say where Reuven is the area of the pit. And you're 1.5 meters, 2 meters away. 3 meters. Would you please tell me where they're having a meal?
Right by the pit.
I'm looking for anyone's reaction.
It's crazy because they've just put him in there to starve and everything, and now they're having a slap up meal right next to him as he screams help.
Do you think they're having the meal next door? What do you think, Ariel?
Close enough that they can hear him.
Close enough. What do you think, Thomas?
They went far, far away
Why?
where they can't hear Yosef's
Why? Why?
Because
Oh,
they don't want here to.
They don't want to hear it.
Mm.
Why do they not want to hear it?
They would forget it and move on. Yeah.
What else?
They want to have a. They want to have a discussion.
What do you want to say?
They want to have peace,
They want to have peace. Why wouldn't they have
Not-
peace if they would hear all his screaming?
because then they would have
interrupt their
empathy.
meal. But
Interrupt the meal? Or something more than that? Russell, what?
Would it
to
would
make
it be
them feel
that
bad.
they would feel accountable?
Very good.
Mm.
Very
And then it says in the same pasuk, and they sat down to eat bread, and they lift up their eyes. And
Okay, good. I'm good. Beautiful question. Beautiful question. Let's go back to what we just read here. Look, here, as my father-in-law writes, the Torah doesn't describe the suffering of Yosef. Right? His crying, his moaning. But you all said, and even Mr. Wiederman doesn't feel so well, says he was screaming for help. Right?
I don't think it was.
The brothers testify about this when they're in Mitzrayim, and they're going to be interrogated now by Yosef, and he's yet to reveal himself. Right? We're guilty that when he was screaming, we didn't listen. Now, in order not to hear his screaming, they went and settled, we can assume, further away, like you're saying, Thomas, and they're having a meal. So first, part of Chazal explained this in a negative way, to the shame. This is so cruel. This is so lack of sympathy. This is a lack of sensitivity to the trouble of their brother. However, there's also another way to think about this, and that is the praise of the brothers. You're probably all asking me, how can it be praise of the brothers? The fact that they're having a meal, we're talking about giants, giant thinkers, giant actions, righteous, fearful of God. That shows how confident, I repeat, that shows how sure and confident they are with what they did to their brother. How confident were they are? Our mishpat, our judgment is mishpat tzedek. It's mamash justice. It's true justice. And therefore, there are two ways how to understand it. We can assume, since they are human beings, that they went as far, far away
Can't have been that far.
in order not to continue hearing. They heard in the beginning, obviously, but they went far away. Now, what I want to do is try to learn and answer the question, who sold Yosef? Was it the brothers that sold Yosef? Or was it not? What do you want to say? No.
I think it was Yehuda that actually saw Joseph, but I was going to say maybe he wasn't actually screaming for help. And when they say Shamanu, we didn't listen, it could be talking about his dreams, and now they see the dreams are coming.
No, it says Lo Shemanu Bitchanelo. They didn't listen to. Then we didn't listen to when he was pleading with us.
Right.
That was the only time we'd be pleading. My dear friend, regarding the very fact of the sale of Yosef, there are several ways to understand who sold him. Rashi says, as we see right away, later on when they meet together, that it was the brothers, that they acted themselves in the sale. They initiated the sale, meaning they yanked, is that the word in English? They yanked him up. Is that the word?
Yeah.
They drew him up from the boar and sold him. And we can back that up, that when Yosef wants to relieve his brothers in this fantastic meeting that we'll learn in another week or two, he says, when he reveals himself, he says, Ani Yosef achichem, I'm Yosef, your brother. Ashem mechartem oti, that you sold me Mitzrayim. That's Rashi giving the simple pshat when they meet and he identifies himself. However, it could be that in that claim that Yosef saying in general that you're the cause of my sale. Why? When they're eating their meal, let's read Pasuk Kafei 25. Vayishvu lechol lechem, vayisu eineihem. They lift up their eyes. Vayiru. What do they see? Meaning at a distance. Vehine. Surprise. Follow the Hebrew reading, please. Orachat Yishmaelim, a convoy, a group of Yishmaelim, apparently sellers. Ba'a mi Gilad. Okay? I'm now pointing east. They're coming over the Gileadi mountains, which we learned about Yaakov and Lavan. They're coming down into the Jordan Valley. They're coming down to Beit Shan Valley, which is underneath the Gileadi mountains, Beit Shan. And we have the Gilboa Mountains, and then Jenin of today, Ganim of the Tanakh, and just a little due south of Ganim is Emek Dotan. From the Dotan Valley to get onto highway number 6 of then, that'll be the coastal road that spice sellers and other merchants would travel, connecting Asia through the bridge of Israel to get down to Africa. At the beginning of Africa would be Egypt, and so on and so forth. So it's a common road that people understand, and they see Gemalehem Nosim, they see what their camels are taking, and so on and so forth. Okay, so we see what's about to happen. And while they're approaching, Yehuda raises a point to his brothers. Follow the reading in verse 26. Vayomer Yehuda el achav ma betza. What are we going to gain? Ki naroget achinu, that we're going to kill our brothers. Vikisino dama, then we're going to have to get an alibi story and cover his blood, and so on and so forth. Lichu, let us go. V'nimkarenu liyash, let's go sell him alive. We see here that Yehuda has some doubts. Are they doing the right thing, or are they not doing the right thing?
Is it about the right thing, or is it because it looks more like he wants to benefit from he's saying we're not going to benefit from murdering him, so we may as well sell it.
I think Yehuda shows leadership here. Yehuda shows leadership. And he says, look, they're thinking tomorrow. Miwa Chacham, who is the wise man? Haroet and all that sees what's going to become of the situation. How are they going to go tomorrow to Abba in Hebron and say, we don't know what happened to Yosef? It's a hard thing. How will the father react? How much pain will it cause him? Will he overcome the pain? Will it cause him death? There are a lot of unknowables that they're going to have to answer to. And maybe Yehuda says, well, let's at least not kill him. As long as he's not here, he's not around, he can, the sale will be a bona fide sale forever. Le'olam va'ed. And he won't bother us. And we'll build the Jewish people with these 11 building blocks. As he's making this suggestion, what do the brothers, he's talking to his brothers. What do his brothers say? Vayishmu echav. You see that at the end of 27? Meaning, this expression is saying the brothers agree. They concur on the idea that, okay. But it doesn't say totally. It says vayishmeu echav. It doesn't say vayishmu echav lidvarav, that they listen to his words, or bikolo, or to his voice. That would be certainty that they're accepting and agreeing. And now, in the interim, what happens? What are we told? As they're debating or discussing, Vayavru anashim midjanim. Someone else appears on the scene called the Midianites. Socharim, they too are merchants. And what does it say? Quote, Vayimshechu, follow the reading, please. They pull him up. Vaya'alu et Yosef min abor. Vayimkud Yosef le'yishmelim besrum kasef. Wow. They're real good salesmen, huh? They're quick. Yeah. They take something that doesn't even belong to them and they make a sale on it. In other words, before we talk about in verse 29 that Reuven shows up, the same Reuven that wanted to suggest that we don't directly murder him and kill him, before that happens, before he decides to come on the scene, and then the Torah says, well, Yosef is not there when he looks for him. We have to see here in verse 28 that's describing the sale. We have different groups appearing here. We have the Midjanim, the Sochorim that just arrived. Beforehand, they saw from a distance who's about to arrive, the Yishmaelim, right? Yosef is in the pit. The brothers are having a meal. And how do we understand what's going on? So not only that, then it says later on in the Psukim that there was another sale made. It's very possible, the following understanding, and this is backed up by some of the commentators, that before the Ishmaelim arrived on the scene, who preempted and arrived first? The Midyanim arrived first. And the brothers are still further away, arguing or negotiating. Should we accept Yehuda? We're hearing it. We're debating possibly. And they arrive on the scene, the Midyanim. And then the Ishmaelim arrive and they make a quick sale. And they make money on the deal. And this can be backed up. Look at chapter 40, please. Verse 15. Perik Mem. Pasuk. Tetvav.
Chapter 40. Sorry, can you repeat that one? Oh, I found it.
You said it yourself.
I found it.
Gentlemen, when Yosef, at the end of our Parsha, is solving dreams.
Which verse?
Solving dreams of Sarah Mashkim and Sarah Ophim, two main ministers of King of Mitzrayim. And he tells them what's going on. And then he says, I'd like you to mention my name to the top officer, to the king. I want you to get me out of this prison here. And he explains to him why. Verse 15. Ki gunov ganafti. Look at that, please. I'm reading it again, verse 15 of chapter 40. Ki gunov ganafti. Double language. Me'eretz ha'ivrim. He doesn't say I was sold. Rather, I was stolen. What does that lead you to understand?
In the one I have, it says it has abducted.
But it comes from the word geneva, which is one of the 10 commandments. Lo tignov. Remember that Hebrew word? Do not steal. Ki gunov ganafti. The fact that he says, I was stolen, that supports the idea that it wasn't the brothers that sold him, but the Midianites came, took property that doesn't belong to them, and sold it. Okay. My dear friends, while the brothers are talking, another brother, lone brother, arrives on the scene. Pasuk Kaftet, 29. Who can properly read the first word of Pasuk 29? We're back where we are.
Vayashav.
That's incorrect.
Vayashav.
That's
Vayashov.
Vayashov. Remember the following rule of reading Tanakh. When we have a Tanakhic verb with two consecutive kamats, okay? Is that clear to everyone?
Right.
Two consecutive kamats. Vayashov. The second one is like an O. What's called a kamat katan. And therefore, it's properly pronounced Vayashov. Vayashov. All of a sudden, Ruvain shows up on the scene. Let's read it. Vayashov Ruvain alabor. Vine, how do you do? Surprise. Vine ein Yosef babar. Uh-oh. Vayikra et begadav. What's going on here? What question are you asking about Reuven, by the way?
Where was he during the meal?
Where was he during the meal? Why wasn't he with the negotiations? Rashi brings a midrashic understanding that it was his turn to go back and help Abba out. That's a little hard to understand because some of you explained to us the geographic distance between Shechem and Hebron, and now we're even in Dotan, which is even further north. How can he go there in such a short period of time? But it could be that in Shechem, another midrash explains, the father has property there. He has sheep there. So maybe traveled from Dotan back south to Shechem, and now he took care of the sheep, and now he's back. Okay? And now he's back. And therefore, it's his turn. He comes back. And now he wants to see what's going on with his brother. This is the brother that, what is intention the Torah revealed to us? He wants to save him. And he doesn't see. He doesn't see the boy. And what is he thinking? Can you read into the pasuk and tell me what he's thinking?
He thinks he died because he ripped his clothes.
The fact that he's ripping his clothing, renting his clothing, is a sign of mourning, isn't it? Uh-oh. And he wanted to save him, but he can't, and he's not there. He's in a lot of trouble. He feels stress, right? And therefore he raises his voice and he says, he goes back to his brothers. Let's read it in verse 30. Vayashov elecha vayomar, hayeled einenu, vani ana aniva. Why is he saying that? Where am I going to go? He's in a tremendous problem. He's so bothered this. What's his problem?
Because he's the oldest. So
And therefore, who's going to have to what?
Take responsibility.
Take responsibility and explain to who? To Abba. He. Now, did they know that Reuven wants to save him?
No.
Do the other brothers know what happened to him?
Yeah.
There's a likelihood they know what happened. They saw these teams of merchants passing by. How would they know someone is in the pit down 10 meters below?
They told him, yeah. They told the caravan.
They can hear him screaming.
They hear him screaming.
Or that.
He's screaming, help, save me! Right? So
I'm
what?
still confused here a little
What?
bit. So it talks about the Yishmaelites,
And Midian.
and then okay, who did the Midianite men buy it from? I'm really confused here. They came there, but it was
So
first
one
time they saw it.
possibility is, like we said, the brother sold it to the Midianim, that sold it to the Ishmaelim, or the opposite, and he got down to, and they sold him to the Egyptians. But another possibility is that the brothers never sold him. While they're debating at a distance, which explains where they're having the meal far away, not to hear the brothers' trouble, the Midianims come and they sell him to the Ishmaelim, and Ishmaelim bring him down to Egypt.
I see.
Rashi here says the sons of Jacob drew Joseph from the pit and sold him. To
Yeah,
the
that's what we said in the
Ishmaelites.
beginning. We said in the beginning, that's Rashi's approach.
They sold
Fine.
him to the Ishmaelites who
Sold them to the Midian. Fine, fine. But right now, Reuven has a deep problem.
Weird.
How am I going to go back to Hebron to explain to Abba, Yaakov Avinu, I wanted to save, but I didn't. I don't know where he is. So he went back to his brothers, and now he has the matter. And now we're going to ask all of you the next question. But before that, Mr. Ariel.
Rob, is there any opinion that Reuven was upset that he may be in trouble because he doesn't see Yosef? He doesn't know he's killed necessarily. Maybe he worries that he went back and told Abba, my brothers just tried to kill me. They threw me into pit to kill me. Now we know after now Reuven gets to the rest of the brothers, then they go and they make the jacket. So then they must have told him, no, let's say that he was killed. But is there a little window here to say maybe he's worried for himself? That his Abba would say, you're in charge of you.
It could be a double thing. I mean, he has responsibility and he has a father. Where, from a human point of sight, Yaakov Avinu, to be bereaved of a son, not know what's going on, it's a terrible predicament. So the question, the situation here is unclear about the sale, but what is clear is what are they going to do? What are they going to do? It's a very complex situation, okay? And like we said, it's a tragic situation, even though God is behind everything here. We're talking about human free choice. So in the history of mankind, one of the most difficult chapters to understand in the Tanakh is this. Not only did you have a problem studying about Cain and Hevel, that Cain cannot overcome his jealousy to kill his brother, and because of one moment of anger, he kills his brother. We're here. It's not one moment of anger of one brother. Here we're talking about the compilation of 10 brothers. 10 brothers full of jealousy, subjectively judging Yosef in several occasions in a wrong way. And now, out of clear planning out, clear logical thinking, they plotted to kill him and they compromised on having him sold. Yudah wanted to do that, have him sold. And he's being sold, whether they did it or someone else, forever. And all this is what? Ignoring. A cold, intellectual ignoring, cruel ignoring of Yosef screaming out, of Yosef's summoning help and begging and crying for help. Okay. I want to ask you, as future parents, or brothers and brothers and sisters of parents, how do you deal with this? How do you go back to your Abba and deal with the situation here? Because Reuven is putting the cards on the table. How am I going to go back to Abba? What am I going to do? And what we see is something interesting. We don't see them getting together, discussing, should we do this? Should we do that? We see immediate action in Pasuk Lamed Aleph, 31. Vayikru et Ketonet Yosef. Doesn't say he took it. Vayikru is singular or plural? Plural. They took the Ketonet Yosef, of all special clothing, right? The special garment that the father had made for Yosef. You see what I'm saying in 31? Hirsch? Vayikru et Ketonet Yosef. Vayishchatu serizim, and they slaughter some goats. Vayitbelu et hakutanet bedam, and they immerse it. In other words, it could be that the Torah didn't want to bother to tell us that they met, consolidated an idea, and took the position. First of all, the others, because maybe the Torah didn't want to say this. And what are they doing? Instead of, they decide not to kill him in cold blood butter, they decided to indirectly have him die. And the Bechor, Reuven, who's taking responsibility for the peace of his youngest brother, he's going to have to explain this to his Abba. But here they make a decision, apparently, all of them, and let Reuven be able to hide up, to conceal the action from their father. So in other words, they're going back, and just like Reuven wanted to hide what he wanted to do from his brothers, they're making a decision that we have to hide the truth from our father Yaakov and see, now listen to this please, what the divine decree will bring. They, and Chazal talk about it, when they argued with one another, they took into account that if their plan does not work, if Yosef doesn't die, like you said before, Ariel, then it was divine intervention that Yosef will live and that they were mistaken. Now, they don't find him. He was likely sold either by themselves or by others. They realize they made a mistake. Now, what do you tell Abba? They have no choice. They can't put Abba in pain about their relationships, that they wanted almost to kill him and we didn't find him. They're going to have to make up a story and wait until maybe there'll be a happy ending later. What do? Pasuk Lamed Bet. Vayishalchu et Ketonet HaPasim. They send with Federal Express Ketonet HaPasim. Vayaviu el avihem. Whatever Rabbeinu Sajagon says, we're clearly talking about a shlichut. Today is the Yad Kislev shlichut, right? Chabad is famous for having shlichim all over the country and helping Jews preserve their Jewish heritage. They are sending a shaliach, because it says vayishallechu, meaning to appoint a shaliach, a messenger, an agent, to perform the task to take this beged with an explanation. So vayaviu el aviyam, the guys bring it to their father. Vayomru, and they say to the father in Chevron, Zot matzano. Here's the specimen. This is what we found. Hakerna. Do you recognize it? Haketonet bin chayi imlo. Can you recognize? Is this the ketonet of your son, or is it not? Okay. This is what they do, and this is what they send over. A very interesting shlichut. Tell me, it's not so clear exactly who they appointed, we don't know, but the pshat of the matter is they made shlichim like we said, and that's why it says vayishalchu. Now, according to Chazal, really, there was one of the sons, it was Naphtali, one of the sons that was, according to the Midrash, he was appointed to do this very important thing, to carry the ketonet. The fact that he is the son of Bilhah. Bilhah, we said, is the maidservant of Rachel. Okay? Then it certainly would not arouse the father to think that there's a deal here between the brothers against Yosef. Remember, Abba knows about the difficult relationships, the jealousy, and maybe even enmity and hatred. But if we said Naphtali, who's from the Yosef's family, came from then he wouldn't think that there's some sort of kinunya, I don't know how to call it in English, that they're everyone is in it and knows about this matter, but they're playing as if they don't know. Who is sent is less important right now to us, but let's try to understand, what are the sons thinking?
How can these be the righteous men lying to their father about?
Okay, so sometimes you have to know you can't tell Abba everything because it's going to hurt him so much. Pain, the anguish. So sometimes there are things in order to bring a better happy ending. Right now, what we have to do is not cause our father to have such pain.
But that would be a nice idea if they weren't the ones who wanted to kill him and then sold it.
So the question is, let's try to think into the minds of the children, and let's see the answer of the father. What is the hope of the children? What do you think?
Get angry at them.
He will get angry or will not get angry? Will not get angry. Maybe after time he'll give up, because if you think he's going to require someone to go look after him, who's going to get the mission to do? Probably Reuven. So that's number one. We're hoping that with time, King Solomon says in the book of Mishlei that after death happens, God gave us a gift to forget. The first 7 days of mourning are very hard. There's pain, there's crying. But the pain and the crying recedes and goes and declines until 30 days. And then it declines more during the year until afterwards it even declines much more. It's more of an intellectual thing, and the physical absence or loss of the beloved is less painful. That's what they're hoping, that the tsa'ar, the pain, the avelut, the mourning, will decrease and decrease and decrease as time goes. But look at what the father's saying. Pasuk Lamed Gimel. Vayakira vayomer. He recognizes the beged. And he says, follow the Hebrew. Ketonet bini. This is the garment of my son. And he makes a quick conclusion. Chaya ra'a achalato. A wild animal devoured him. Tarof, Toraf, Yosef. Everyone repeat those 3 words. One more time. Wow. The father's reaction is he understands one matter from another matter, right? Let's talk about Chabad. Letters Chet Bet Dalet, Chokhmah, Bina, and Da'at. Bina is to understand Aleph from Bet, or Bet from Aleph. The power of inference. He sees the bloody garment. He says, "Uh-oh, he's dead," and therefore he screams out. He can't even control himself. This emotional statement: Toraf Yosef. My son was torn apart by an animal. So this tremendous reaction by the father, that it's Ketonet Bini and Toraf Yosef, that means the intellectual reaction has really penetrated deep down in his heart. And right now, with emotion and excitement, he makes this statement. And the question is, can he be consoled or can he not be consoled?
No.
Because regular death allows a person to receive consolement, right? That's the mitzvah upon us. When someone passes away, we have the mitzvah of nichum avilim, to console the mourners, to share their remorse, to share their sadness, and be with them, and to be comforted, right? Ashkenaz. The Sephardim say very quickly, very shortly at the end of the visit, Tenuchamu min hashamayim, may you be consoled from heaven. The Ashkenazim have a longer statement. Hamakom yinachem otcha, may the omnipresent console you. Mitoch shar avelei Tzion, amongst the other mourners of Zion, v'Yerushalayim in Jerusalem. But here it says, Vayikra Yaakov simlotav. We're ending today's show with these two psukim. Yaakov tore, rented his garments. He's in mourning. Vayasem sak b'motnav. Reading verse 34, follow it. And he places a sackcloth on himself. Vayitabel al beno yamim rabim. Look what Rashi says in the name of our sages. How many are many days?
22 years.
22 years. In other words, the Abba Yaakov is not able to be comforted, to be consoled. In verse 34, we just read Rashi, which is showing us a sign that maybe deep down in his heart or in his soul,
He knows he's
he
alive.
senses that Yosef is alive. For this and more in tomorrow's Shi'or.
Where is Yitzhak in all this?
So there's a war tomorrow. So Yosef.
We read about the passage.